Welcome back to another episode of Zoning Protocol, and we're going to get straight into it while we follow our transit system here in the city. It's a beautiful day in Stratford. First thing I want to do actually is replace one of my train stations, and we'll get to that. So when I first started playing this build, I thought that an overhead station was probably the way to go, but these tend to have very finicky issues. I did come across this asset that was a German train station that I thought is really cool. So the Deutschbahn, and it's just got that very interesting form here. Just gonna pop in and see. Oh, what do we have here? A weird connection, it seems. We're just gonna pop in and make sure that our line is connected to this new station after I get all of this up and connected. And let's have a look at our train lines. I'm not too sure why that doesn't want to correspond and keep going. Let's just have a rework of this train line. Sometimes these tracks can be quite finicky, and you sort of just have to get them right. There we go. What's interesting about this, even though it's a custom asset, it does have very interesting upgrades, including this unique clock tower that actually reflects the right time. So now that we have this offshoot leading to the train station, I think it would be really cool to get a little bit of parking so a few people can actually park at the station. What we'll also add is a simple crossway so people can actually find themselves with an easy path to the station. Right, I'm not expecting a lot of parking to actually be needed in this particular area, so we're just going to look for a smallest parking option and just plop a few of those into place. Finding something that fits is the key here. This road isn't necessarily the most busy because it only leads to our little mining fields. What we can do is decide that we're just going to have an offshoot on this side as well that will lead us to parking. All we've got to remember is that we want people to be able to have a pathway into the station. Now, these custom parking assets are really cool. Getting a few custom assets just to up what your city looks like. And there we go. These can also be upgraded to give it a higher level, but we'll just see how that goes for now. I guess I've said it before, but I'll just reiterate it here. I love playing with the day and night cycles on just because it makes it feel more realistic. And there's a lot of interesting night assets. And here we're just popping into that little center that we did that is very busy with bike traffic, which is what we would expect. And it does tell us that maybe there is a need for some underground bike parking. Because you never know, these people could just be wandering around looking for places to park their bike. Of course, with how densely packed this area is, it can be difficult to find space for bike parking, but we can always get lucky. I think what we're going to do now is try and meet some of our needs, and that's going to be zoning needs. We look like we have quite a high need for or demand for all our zones except offices. So we're just going to expand the city a bit and create some new areas, some new livable spaces, and hopefully meet some of that demand. I was thinking over here towards the right of the water, turn this into a low density area, and we can sort of pass a bridge through these 3 points, and maybe in this video we'll set up our fisheries we'll set up our fishery industry, because I know that there's good fish around these 3 islands, if I remember correctly. Let's start with zoning in some low density areas and create a new neighborhood. First thing I would like to do is just level out this area so we can get a nice level setting for our density buildings. Well, you don't have to do this, but I do find that it helps in zoning and probably more realistic because it's very rare that you would have a situation where houses are built on unlevel ground. This would be a great place to start the bridge off. So, when it comes to bridges, I do expect that there's going to be a time when we're going to need to use this space to access our shipping lanes. A good way to future-proof this is to actually install your shipping lanes before anything else. I'm not expecting to have a high amount of traffic leading from that little island there onto the mainland, because it's going to be largely just residential. So we're going to put out some EU low-density waterfront housing, but this is a great time to use Plata. And what Plata is going to allow us to do is control not only our zoning, but the size of the zoning parcels that we put out. And just as they're named, we're going to use the waterfront at the waterfront, and then we'll see what we can do with the more inland parcels. So of course, as you'd expect, a bridge doesn't have the necessities to carry water and electricity pipelines across. We need an underground connection, which is relatively easy to do. I do think something that would be very interesting is to have like a little island market. And to do that, we're going to go into our walkable roads. And I reckon just one long street would be pretty cool. But as I said, Plata is in itself quite time consuming, but man, the results are pretty epic. And why don't we do something interesting like have a lone standing, very cool bookshop in this area? And it almost gives you a reason to visit this little island that is mostly residential, but then we'll have this cool little flea market type of deal going on in the middle. In one of our earlier videos, we are taking a loan to mitigate the damage that was caused by a tornado. So this seems like a good time to pay that loan back because I'm not looking to make any massive purchases just at the moment. I think some medium density housing will go really well on this island as well. And I really like the Dutch row housing, and we'll open that in Plata, and it looks like it wants to do 2x2s. So my final design for this area is going to also install a train station that will have people connected to our main lines and make it a lot easier for them to get to and from this little island over here. Now this wouldn't be completed without having a lovely park to visit. So we can go for a large park here. Ooh, the Pavilion's restaurant. That would be cool. Maybe we'll have a restaurant here. That'll definitely bring in clients with a very unique looking park and restaurant. And you see these little offshoots of pedestrian paths? We can connect those onto the road and therefore have an easier way for people to just join and get to the walkable areas. Yeah, look at that. It really does look like a tiny little village setting. And now we can probably zone in some of that commercial that we were looking for. But what I would like to do is actually do a mixed housing commercial on one end and then commercial on the other end. This is what I was looking for, the EU mixed old housing style apartment buildings, because they're very unique and immediately give you that old town vibe about them. this time we can actually fit the wide walkway, which is really cool. And for the spaces in between here, we're just going to go for your average low density commercial. Of course, I was trying to avoid it because we had initially been spawning a lot of petrol stations. So we've just got to hope for the best. And if we're lucky, that is not what we're going to end up spawning. But yeah, look at the island so far. So we've got our houses, which are looking pretty cool. And then we've got our really nice density. And we've now got this beautiful walkway that we can turn into a park out the back here. So we'll do that. Now, what we had thought of is installing a train station, and that's why we've left quite a bit of space here. And it's all about what train station would best fit in that space. I would have loved to use the Deutsche Bahn train station again, but this thing is just mammoth. The other option is we could do the train station next to the water and then have a walkway that leads in between the houses. I think that's probably our best option. Now, of course, what this does is affect the view of some of the houses, so we've got to be smart about it. Of course, keeping an eye on our already existing shipping lane, we're going to try and increase this island. And I actually don't want this train station connecting to the main road, just because that's going to hinder our traffic slightly. So let's give it its own road. By doing this, we will allow ourselves a little bit of space that we may not have had otherwise. One thing I do love adding to station roads or roads that end in a dead end is just a little bit of a cul-de-sac to allow vehicles to do a little turnaround if needs be. And there we go, we have our little village train station. We'll get that connected with time. So what we're trying to create here is just a very European looking suburban neighborhood, if you will, that will have a market, and we're probably going to install some education as well. Alright, let's look at how we can connect this railroad system to our larger railroad system. Oh, as you can see, we are just squeezing by on our shipping lines, which is good enough. So when looking at the railway stations, it's a metropolitan line that's just connecting industry to our central station and our little mid-city area and our other suburban area. And we're going to call this the City Circle line. Pretty much going in a circle. It'll have a very clear start and terminus because of our German train station that is more of a terminus with an end zone. So I reckon we're going to intersect here and send our line as an offshoot to our little suburban island. So the trick here is not necessarily going to be with getting the train line to the island. The main trick we're going to be dealing with is actually the fact that we've got to create a bridge. We're going to go over our shipping line. And that's our issue right there. It is such a massive bridge. Well, never mind that. What we're going to do is take this opportunity to expand our city and allow ourselves more space to create that bridge. What about if we went 2 in 1? So some of the road bridges include a train line underneath them, but they're also just such massive roads that it sometimes defeats the purpose. But let's just have a look and see what we can come up with. Okay, we'll just go back to our original plan, which is install this massive looking, let's not call it a monstrosity, but it is quite a massive bridge. That worked out in a long-winded way. We'll obviously go back and try and improve on a lot of the optics of it all. There we go. We're connected. Love that this path is being used, and we're just going to make it a little bit more usable by including walkways, underground walkway access. Here we are. For some reason they're under parks. These stairwells are golden. And one there. Get one there, and let's connect them. And just because I know that there's a chance that a lot of people who live here will be trying to work in the city, it is probably a good opportunity to install some parking. And we can just check if there's any parking. Yeah, there's about 20 parking there. That's, if we're going to turn this into a beachy area, we might as well have parking all along this road. I think this gives us a perfect opportunity to use some of the new assets that come with the ports. As our little park road, but it's going to also allow us to have a few interesting parks. I think we're just going to extend this offshoot just slightly to give us a little bit more to play with. And we're just going to have a park that allows you to walk around the shoreline and get you all the way to the lighthouse. We're going to use Japanese maple and some silk floss trees as well. And we're sure that at least once a year, around this time, around fall, September, October, these will bloom into these lovely colors. What I would love to have on the other side is, of course, some easily accessible parking. Of course, it's going to be nothing too wild because at the same time, we don't want it to overpower our low density housing. Well, the other idea is if we can't fit a large park in, we could still use smaller parks and zone in some low density commercial, and that could still be a pretty good attractor. It's just an area where you can come in and park your car. And then let's look at a lot more parks that we can probably fit into here. And have a pub at the park overlooking the water. Very cool. Using our better bulldozer, we're going to delete some surfaces. It's just going to give everything a more unique feel. We're going to change this space into a park area. I think we'll have a large fountain in the middle, a couple of food carts and food stall. How about a small stage, different kind of food stall? And what we want to do, of course, is be able to have pedestrians access this area. So we'll just line it with a few of these tiny parks. Now we have got this space here, but we're going to leave that space to zone in some low density commercial buildings when we get that opportunity. One thing I would love to add though is some flowers, because those really bring life. How beautiful is that? We have space here again for more activities and maybe even a park, a tiny little park, but that would need a road. So we'll figure that out. Hopefully we'll get some interested parties. Oh, it looks like the train station is doing quite well. And I'm just intrigued to see how many people, because I'd like to change that to I think we're still having an issue with it zoning in or wanting to zone in petrol stations, and anyway, we'll let it go and see. It'll just be good to get some customers flowing into this area. But there we go. We've got a little seaside park. And look at the cool reflection of the sun. I like. That will do for now. We'll just go in and see how everything else is going. Wow, this has got really busy. And look how many people are coming into the area. Let's see where are you heading off to have a little photo? So he's coming to have a look at the windmill. So there we go, full on tourist. So we'll just let this simulation run for a bit and see what we can populate. The next thing we wanted to do was set up a fishing industry. But I see we've made enough money, so it's probably time to pay off that bank loan completely. Happy days, and we are debt free. Something that would also be very useful is an opportunity to expand our industry. We're seeing like a high cost of resources, but I do know we need to get a few more jobs going. First things first, let's buy some more parcels so we can extend our industry outwards. Gonna buy those 2 map tiles and expand our industry. Oh, we've got a railroad. Maybe we'll have our port in this area. Now, when it comes to expanding our industry, we're lucky here that one of our major roads seems to just lead to our incineration plant. So that's what we're going to take and turn into our new industry road. And what this is going to do is going to enable us to have a steady flow of jobs for new citizens that have just settled in the city. And if you can see, we would definitely in dire need of industry because we've actually plopped quite a bit and the needle has hardly moved on our industry demand. And we've pretty much maxed out our industry demand, so we'll let those sort of spawn in and fix some of these issues we're seeing here, which is not as difficult as it would seem. So while those industry parcels zone in, let's come back and have a look here. And we've got some activity. We've got some people walking around. No one quite hanging in the park, but that's pretty good. I like it. Okay. Let's have a look at what our demands actually are in our production. So we are low on everything. We're not in the plus on anything at all, except maybe. So we need to look at our industries and look at where we can improve on that. First thing I would like to do first is connect a little walkway for people who've taken the train and need to head into our new industry zone. So, now that we know that our industries are in deficit of pretty much everything, we're going to look at expanding. And the easiest one to start with is, of course, food. So let's have a look and see if we have some fertile land. And yes, we do. So we're just going to start with a simple one first, which is grain farming. And let's get placed. And I do think that this land over here will be pretty good for a different industry, which would be forestry. And as you see, now that we have our forestry industry up and running, we've been able to unlock some new assets that came with the industry package. As you can see, these new signature buildings are popping up because our forest industry is up and running. And now we have access to an antiques shop, which would fit pretty well in this little area. That gives you a good reason to take the train out to the island and hop on and spend some time antique shopping. And it just fits perfectly. As we're now seeing that we're having some healthcare issues on this island, which is actually pretty valid because this is quite far from our main hospital. So what we can do is actually get some sort of healthcare going, be it a small health clinic, and that will just allow us one ambulance, good enough. Which just reminds me that, oh, look at that, we're already covered in this destination. Okay. So this is more of the island system. Wow. It's a lot of people. I do think that a pedestrian bridge would be a very cool addition to this area. As we see, it is getting pretty busy. Just give everyone an easier commute to get to the train station. And look at that. Look at all those people coming in. And I reckon this gives us an opportunity to just finish this off by zoning some more mixed housing and give people a little bit more space to live on this island. I am very curious to see where a lot of these people are heading to. A lot of them are just customers, which is exactly what we wanted to create. A little holiday destination for our citizens. In that classic European pedestrian street. So thank you for tuning in today, and we've done some pretty cool things. We've created a whole little European village. We've expanded our industries, and we've added a little cute park to our city. So I hope you enjoyed our little tune-in for our build today, and like, comment, and subscribe if you've enjoyed this content, and I'll get you more content, and we'll see how we can improve our city moving forward. As you can see here, the beachside individuals are loving it.